We're learning this third Sikhe of Beshalach in Chelek Tezayin on page 173. This shir is being learnt Lila Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rab Menashe Koltman. This is a Sikhe here about the Mon and about Shabbos, about Bitochen, some very fundamental inyanim that are again Avodas Hashem in our life Bechlal. Der erste Mal, was in der Teire werden angesagt die Zivuyim und Dinim von Shabbos. The very first time where you find in the Teire where it speaks about any commands or any halachas of Shabbos is in unser Parsha B'Shaychus zum Mon. It's in this week's Parsha in connection to the Mon. Und wie bald as alle in Yoni HaTeire sind betachlis adiuk, since everything in Teire is exact, precise, is move on as der Inyan von Mon und Shabbos haben a Shaychus und Teichen. So it's understood from this that Mon and Shabbos are related to one another in their content. Und wie das ist euch mashma, this is also something that we can see von dem, was wird gebracht b'shem Aresag. This that's brought in the name of Rab Saadia Goin, as b'shas when we gefind sich b'Shabbos in a weitem Weg. If a person is found somewhere far on the road, me weiß dort nicht welche Parsha man darf lernen, dem Shabbos, and the person does not know what's the Parsha of the week that he has to read that Shabbos. So me lernen Parsha Saman. So the Parsha you learn is the Parsha of the Mon. So what do we see? That the Mon is the theme of Shabbos. So if you don't know the particular Parsha, this is Shabbos. Noch mehr, even more so, trotzdem was b'Shabbos is der Mon nicht gekommen, even though the fact is that on Shabbos there was no Mon. Steht aber in Zoyar, but the Zoyar says, as Adarab, on the contrary, the bracha l'mayla of Yeridas HaMon in the Sheishis Yimei HaShavua is given b'Shabbos. What's the source of the bracha of the Mon for the 6 days of the week that the Mon did come down? It comes from Shabbos. Und wie steht euch in Mechilte. As it says also in the Mechilte, Baruch Mon, that what's the bracha of Shabbos? The bracha of Shabbos is Mon. So the bracha is not only the Mon that you had, the extra Mon on Friday for Shabbos, but it refers over here, according to the Zohar, to the fact that Shabbos is the source of the bracha of Mon for the entire week. Darf man verstehen? So the question is, in was versteht den Kesher zwischen Mon and Shabbos? What is the connection? Where do we see the connection between Mon and Shabbos? Not only do we not see any connection between them, seemingly they are two things that are completely different one from another. Die mitzvahs und inyanim von Shabbos sind voran in alles Manem und Mekaymes. The mitzvah and Shabbos, the mitzvah and everything of Shabbos is something that you have in all times, in all places. Every week, Shabbos is the holy day of the week. Yeridas HaMon aber is given not an azman mesuyim and hamakim mugbal. Mon, on the other hand, was something in only one time in history for those 40 years, and for that time and place that is that the Yidden were in the Midbar. The 40 Jahre not ben machni Yisrael ben Midbar. If so, why do we say that Shabbos and the Mon go together? Then what is the specialty of Shabbos that this is a day that the Eibishter benches it with the Mon? So seemingly we can answer very simply, as the Nekudim Mishutefes from Mon and Shabbos is in them, that what you see similar, the same point of Shabbos and the Mon, is was in beide is nidok kein tirche und avoda. Both for Shabbos and in the Mon, so there's no effort and there's no work that goes into this. Der Mon is given lechem min hashamayim. Mon is bread that comes from heaven. You don't have to plow and plant and all the other work that's done in order to get your bread. When Al Derech says by Shabbos, similar we find regarding Shabbos, as noisif of them is it's a tam malacha b'Shabbos, in addition to the fact that on Shabbos itself it's forbidden to do any work, is mishum einik Shabbos, but even more so, because of the pleasure that a person is supposed to have with the Shabbos, a mitzvah shalei lahar klal ba'asakav. There's a mitzvah that a person shouldn't at all think about any of his business. In his eyes, it should be like it's all completely done. So we see over here that Shabbos is the same thing. That Shabbos, a person has nothing of his work, no effort, and not even to think about the work that he does. This comparison between Shabbos and the Mon is not sufficient. Because here in this itself, we could see a difference. Weil, Aleph, number one, by the Mon gefindt man doch gewisse Tirches, you do find a certain effort that goes into the Mon. Wie the Gemara sagt, what does the Gemara say? Tzadikim lechem. The tzadikim got the Mon as prepared loaves of bread. Beinanim ugais, Beinanim got them in biscuits, and Rishayim tochnu berechayim aydacha b'meducha. The Rishayim had to grind it with a mill, or they had to pound it. It wasn't fully prepared. Another thing the Gemara says, Tzadikim yarad al Pesach b'teyim. For the Tzadikim, the man came for them right at the entrance of their homes. Beinanim yatzel lulkait. The Beinanim had to go out and find it and collect it. And Rishayim shatu v'laktu. And the Rishayim had to go out a far distance to get their man. So what do we see here? That there is tircha, there is going and finding your man in certain situations. Niet videriyim from kol malachta esuya by Shabbos. Not like Shabbos when all your work is all done. As a yid daf afilet mahara zayin in zayin asakim, where a yid should not even think at all about any of his business. So in this sense, the man is not exactly on that level. It's different. Beis, on the other hand, when we say that on Shabbos you're not allowed to do any work, that includes any kind of work whatsoever. Ki'ilu kol malachta yasuya, as if all of your work of the week is done. By man, which is not so regarding the man, is the here we're talking about the fact that man came down and the Yidden did not have to invest the energy and the effort that usually has to be done for food. So specifically regarding their food is what man is. So the far is mistaver, so therefore it's more logical to say as follows. As the Sheiches zwischen man and Shabbos is in dem Prat von Zugreiten, die in Yoni Mosen war Achille von Shabbos. It's taka regarding the food, regarding preparing the food. So here there's a comparison between Shabbos and the man. Wie das ist euch Muvon von dem, was der Chiyuv von Gimel Sudis von Shabbos und euch von Lechem Mishnah, we see that the obligation of eating 3 meals on Shabbos and also the fact that we have Lechem Mishnah, let it been up from the Psukim b'negeit some man. It's learned out from the psukim that it says by the man, Vayem Moshe echluhu hayom, ki Shabbos la Hashem hayom, or ki Shabbos hayom la Hashem, that is, and hayom lo yisimtzu basada, and lechem mishnah, and it says in the pasuk the term lechem mishnah. So the fact that it says 3 times hayom, so that's the 3 meals, and then it says in the Torah the term lechem mishnah regarding the man, so that's the source for the lechem mishnah that we do every Shabbos. So thus haste, what do I see from this? As the Inyane Achiluf on Shabbos, when it comes to the food and the way we eat on Shabbos, let it not rise from man. That is what we learn out from the man. So therefore, the connection of the man and Shabbos, as the Rabbi here will explain by Arichas and the Sicha, is going to be regarding this subject of the food on Shabbos. From Pasuk, so to begin, the Rabbi explains, so it says on this Pasuk regarding the man, Hinini mamte lechem lechem and hashamayim, that I will rain down for you bread from heaven. And and the people of the nation will go out every day to collect the man. And this is all in order to test them whether they will follow my halachas, my Torah, or not. So the Torah uses the term leman, that this is the purpose of the man. So Rashi explains what this means, that im yishmeru mitzvahs hatluyas by, will Yidden keep the mitzvahs that are dependent on the man, that are applied to the man, which is shelo yesiru mimenu. Number 1, not to leave over from the man to the next day, and also v'lo yetzu b'Shabbos lilkait, and they won't go out on Shabbos to collect from the man. As their tam unmechovin in Yeridas Haman, that the reason and the whole purpose of the man coming down is to oisproven, is to test the Yidden. And yishmeru mitzvahs hatluyas by, whether they'll keep the mitzvahs dependent on the man. And was die mitzvahs zenen, and specifically what are those mitzvahs? Shelo yisirim imenu v'lo yetzu b'Shabbos lilkait, not to leave over for the next day from this man, and not to go out and collect on Shabbos. Davon verstehen, the question here on this is, was is the shayches zwischen die zwei mitzvahs? What is the specific connection of these 2 mitzvahs here? Aleph, shelo yisirim imenu, not to leave over from the man to the next day. And Beis v'lo yatzu b'Shabbos lilkait, and the fact that they didn't collect any man on Shabbos itself. For zei beide sind in der leman, this is the whole purpose, der tam fun Yeridas Haman. In these mitzvahs you see what the purpose of the man is. How do these 2 mitzvahs express the concept of what man is about? Das verstehen, so we can understand this. Bahaktem levayer dem chidush von man. Let's first understand what's really the novelty of man. Was is lechem in hashamayim, which is bread that comes from heaven, of lechem in aretz, over the bread that grows from the ground. So the Rebbe will explain on a deeper level. It's not just simply the fact that it's an amazing miracle that the Eibishter makes man rain down from the sky. But there's something over here that this expresses. Lechem in haaretz is verbunden mit Avedas Adam. The bread that grows from the ground, that's connected to the work of the person. The person has to prepare properly in the natural means, charisha, zriya, plowing and planting, is the Eibishter mashpia lechem. And then, through these natural means, in Teva, the Eibishter gives the person the bread. Bread over here does not only refer to bread and food, but it refers to all needs of a person in this world that we have to invest and do what we have to through natural means in order to have what we need. So this is something that a person gets through this keli, this vessel, and this garment of nature in the world. Whereas the bread that comes from heaven is nitali and akeli from darki teva, does not depend on any vessel and any action and any means of nature. Says in them there's absolutely no work of the person that goes into this. We'll move on, and we understand as behesem lezeh is oich pe'ula from regesh adam, that this difference between the lechem and hashamayim and lechem and haaretz also very much affects the attitude of the person regarding this bread. Lechem and haaretz, was is die birches Hashem? Was die birches Hashem is angetan in der teva de gekeli, was the mensch gerät zu. So this is also a bracha from Hashem. But here, this bracha of Hashem is enclosed and comes through the nature, the vessel of nature that there is in the world that a person prepares. So then what happens here? Is nit mer via keli unalavosh the birchas Hashem. Yes, the person is aware of the fact that what he's doing is not the source of the bracha. It's just a vessel for the bracha. It's just a garment to bring down the bracha of Hashem. And the realization of the person goes actually a step further. Even this, that there is a garment and vessel of nature, he's not doing this because in his eyes, teva, nature, has any significance whatsoever. This is Hashem's will, this is Hashem's command, that I should do these natural actions, so he does so. But there's absolutely no credibility, no significance that nature itself has. The Eibishter's ratzon was, as uberacha v'ayelekecha, is dafke b'chol hashatase. That the bracha of the Eibishter is only when there's action that you do. Nit durch zayna yoshev v'batel, not just by sitting around doing nothing. So this is a very strong awareness that a person has. Von deswegen, but however, at the same time, bibalt as lepoyol kumt der lechem min haaretz. But since the fact is that the bread only comes through the ground and through the work that you do here, durech dem levush von artzies v'teva, through the garment that there is in the earth and the nature here. Was der Mensch tut auf durch seine Aveide und Malacha, which the person here below has to do this, and only there, through this, comes the bracha. Gibt es an Ort zum Machsher sein, dem Menschen auftu für sein Panasa. So this gives place for a person to give some significance to the actions that a person does. In the end of the day, you need that action of the person below, and only through this, the bracha comes. On the other hand, when it comes to bread that comes down from heaven, here there's a completely different attitude. There's no involvement whatsoever of an action from the person. This awakens within a Yid that attitude that he's completely relying on Hashem. Completely. There's not even a keli, there's nothing that the person does involved in this. Alpizez, move on. So based on this we can understand as the Nisayan, im yishmeru mitzvahs hatluyas b'shaloi yisiru mimenu, that the Eibishter says this is a test to see if the Yidden are going to keep the mitzvahs of the month. And the first mitzvah is not to leave over from one day to the next, is their tam, their mechuvim for Yeridis Haman. This is the reason, this is the whole purpose of what the Mon was about. Lechem and Hashemayim, being bread from heaven that's completely above nature. In order to bring out, to express by Yidden, durch dem Eisproven, and this also tests them, so to speak, by Yidden, dem Shleim is dingen betochen in dem Eibishten, that complete level, that highest level of betochen that Yidden have in Hashem, as ein ganze lechem, that everything you have of your bread, und alle etztarchies, all of your needs, kommt bloß von dem Eibishten allein. It comes directly from Hashem himself. There's no garment, there's no intermediary through anything that the person does that it has to come through. So therefore, since this is what the man is about, and this is the absolute bitachon that a yid has, so there can't be here at all any room as der menschel zechalein bazargen mit lechem with margen, that a person should be concerned and he should assure himself that he has the bread for tomorrow. And this is the mitzvah. Don't leave over anything for tomorrow because you're concerned what's going to be tomorrow. Will I have man for tomorrow or not? The absolute bitachon that it comes completely from Hashem and there's no involvement of the person saving for tomorrow. This is what it says in the Tanchuma, that the monk came down every day. Hashem that created the day, bara parnasasa. He creates the parnasa for this day. So from this, Rabbi Lazar Hamidai said, if a person has what to eat today, and he says to himself, he's concerned, what am I going to eat tomorrow? So this kind of a worry, he's lacking the true emunah and betachin in Hashem that the Eibusher created today, and he provided today what you need. He creates tomorrow, and he'll give you tomorrow what you need. So this explains the first mitzvah of lo yisiru mimenu of the man. So here we see that the whole concept of the man is it's completely coming min hashamayim, and there's no involvement of the person, and even a garment of nature or keli of teva also is non-existent. It comes directly from Hashem. But here we see that there's actually an opposite point. That although the man that comes min hashamayim is generally speaking completely not dependent on the person's work. Is the Yedidus among given zusammen mit Yedidus Hatal. This also explains another detail why the man came down together with dew. Was tal lemetzar. The Gemara says dew is something that always comes down. It's not like rain where there are seasons or times when it does or doesn't rain. Tal is always here. Hayais says Nitalian Avedis Adam ki yedua. Tal is something which is not dependent on the Aveda of a person, whether people are deserving for this or not. There's always the dew. At the same time, however, we find as euch der Mann is gewend verbunden mit Tirches Adam, that man also had the effort and the person's involvement in this. Wie gesagt, früher, Siv Beis, as mentioned before regarding Siv Beis, you have to go out to collect the man and prepare the eating of the man, various degrees, depending on Tzadikim, Beinanim, and Rishayim. Und das ist nicht nur bei Rishayim und Beinanim. Now you may think this is only by the Rishayim and Beinanim that have to go and find it and collect it or prepare it, but not by the Tzadikim. But some gedacht da reisgehen in Dreis and Kleiben, that have to go and find it. Or afilo by Tzadikim was der man is Yarad al Pesach B'Teyem. Even the Tzadikim that the man did come down right at the entrance of their homes. Haben sie al Kapanim gemusst haben die Tirche von Zeneuv Kleiben dem man from Pesach B'Teyem. They at least had to make that minimal effort to go out of their house and pick up that man from the floor right over there. So we see that the man is something that did have some effort involved in it. Nachmer, we see the fact that the Aveda of a person has some place here by the man even more so. Das Gufa, the very fact that we say here, was es eine Farang chilukim in der Tirche zwischen die drei Darges von Yidden, that there are differences in the level of effort on the three different categories of Yidden, the Tzadikim and the Beinanim and the Rishayim, is abavais, this itself is a proof for the fact, as the Brachen von Man is nicht given in ganzen, nicht verbunden mit Avedes Adam HaMekabel. That this is a bracha that comes in such a way that it's not totally detached and not associated with the level of the person that's receiving it. Nit as vital, and this is not like the do, vus lechaluten kin chilik nit so vemener kommt an, where there it totally has no connection whatsoever to who the tal is coming down. This is by alam and gleich. It's by everyone equal. Not here by the man as venzich. It matters in a gewisse mass to some extent. I wiffel the mekabel hat sich zugegreten is right to them. To what extent the receiver of the man prepared and is fitting and deserving to get this man. By tzadikim, vinzige tirche, tzadikim less work, by beinanim matter, by the beinanim more, and by the shayim nachmer, and by the shayim even more. So the very fact that we have the division of these categories shows that the level of the receiver of the man is taken into account. Dermit, so the Rebbe now says, with this we can understand, is eich muvan, der diek haloshen and pasik, the exact word the pasuk uses here. Hineni mante lechem lechem min hashamayim, and I will rain down for you bread from heaven. Nit wie sagt bei Parshas Haman in Bamidbar, unlike the term that it uses regarding the man in Bamidbar, in Parshas Baloischa, benegeit zum Tal uberedes atal, that the tal comes down from above, the dew comes down. It doesn't say that the Eibishter rains down tal. Seemingly, you have here a contradiction when you look at this from a deeper level. Rain refers to a flow from something that comes from above that was generated through Aveda below. Just like it is with rain, simply. As it says in the pasuk, what's rain? Rain is when there's a cloud that rises from the moisture below, and there it drops the rain on wherever the cloud goes. So you see that what produces this moisture, it comes from below. So if so, wie is masim, der loshen mamter by lechem and hashamayim. Why are we using the term mamter, rain, regarding the bread that comes from heaven, versus nitoli in the aveda from asarusa de lesata, which is not at all dependent on the aveda from below. The man comes completely min hashamayim every single day. That's nothing to do with the person at all. Now the asbara is kanal. So the answer for this, as explained here, Hagam as lechem min hashamayim is beikra yashpa versus hechef and avodas hamakabel al derech hatal. Yes, it's true that man is primarily a flow that comes from above, that's completely removed from the aveda, the level that the receiver is below, like it is with the tal. However, when it comes down into the world, it does come down on a level of mamter, matter like rain, which has some kind of connection to the level of the receiver that's receiving this man. So therefore we see in the man here two opposite points. On one hand, man is totally lechem and hashamayim. And as the Rabbi explained before, when we say totally, what that means is no levush, no keli whatsoever. Completely from the Eibishter, without any involvement of nature or the actions of the person. On the other hand, though, we see that in the man, you did have the level of the person, the divisions of tzaddikim, beinim, and rishayim, and at least the minimal effort that was involved in collecting the man. Why is that necessary regarding the man if, in fact, the source of the man is a hashpa that comes completely min hashamayim, not dependent on nature whatsoever? So the explanation for this is as follows. What's the point of the man which was bread from heaven is given a hachane to the knisa from Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. Besides the fact that it provided them the food for that time period when they were in the Midbar, this also served as a preparation for the Yidden later when they entered into Eretz Yisrael. For dort is given the Seder from Lechem and Aretz, where there the life they lived was depending on the bread from the earth. So how is it a preparation? Because durch them was mod bavizn Yidden begolu, through the fact that Eibishter showed Yidden very openly and clearly wie sehr Parnasse und Etztarches wird sie gegeben nur von dem Eibishter allein, that all of their Parnasse and all of their needs are being given to them from the Eibishter alone, without any nature involved. Was das hat das sie zugegräht und gegeben der Koyach, this prepared them and gave them the power as euch kommendig in Eretz Neshaves, that even after they arrived into a settled land in Eretz Yisrael, und arribegendig zum Seder von Lechem and Aretz, and transitioning into this new Seder of the bread that you eat from the ground, soll man nicht vergessen, chas v'sholem, as hu anois noch ha-koyach lasses chayil. That they saw themselves, that it's the Eibishter, that's the one that gives the koyach for anything that you do. So this prepared them to continue and have the same attitude even after they come into Eretz Yisrael. Nachmer, even more so, the Lechem and Hashamayim is nit bloiz ha'achanun an esinis koyach. It's not just a preparation and empowering them to have the right attitude. Not ervet nimshach und nirgash euch in Eretz Nesheves. This is something, this hashpa, the way the hashpa comes from Hashem to Yidden, actually continues. The same kind of hashpa continues, and it's also experienced in the same way in Eretz Nesheves, in the settled land in Eretz Yisrael. Vibald as Yidden zene be'etzem hecha from Welten Teva. Because the truth is, even after Yidden came into Eretz Yisrael and they ate the lechem and Aretz, Yidden always remain above the laws of nature. is der emes. So the truth is, as a fille when ze kommen up in Welt, even when a Yid descends into a place in the world, and I say that Aveda fun eretz neshaves, and he's living in a place where there is a settled land, and there are the laws of nature that you see seemingly here, however, in truth, and the essence of what their panasa is, it's actually not bound to the laws of nature that there is in lechem and aretz. That is the truth. So the same exact hashpah that comes above nature in the lechem and hashamayim actually continues regarding Yidden even after they come into the land. And the Rebbe clarifies what this means. Afile nitten anoifin was teva b'fnei atzmai hot kein batrefnit. Es is nit mer wie alle vush zu birchas Hashem. Nature so much has nothing, no connection to the hashpah of the Yidden, even the point that we said before, that nature is insignificant, and you know that the nature is just a means, and through this the bracha of the Eibishter comes, but after all, it does go through nature. So even that late nature should serve merely as a garment through which the Eibishter's bracha comes, even that's not the case when it comes to Yidden. Und der Levush Gufa macht der nor de far was azoy zet zivi Hashem kanal, and the person only prepares the garment of nature because this is Hashem's desire, but after all, you do need that garment of nature, and it's through it that Hashem's bracha comes. Even this is not the case when it comes to Yidden, because the truth is that it's all from the Eibishter himself. As the Rebbe clarifies here, a bedach is the hashpah verbunden mit teva. If this is the attitude that there has to be a levush of teva, yes, it has no significance, it's all the ratzon of Hashem, but it's still connected to nature. It comes through this nature. The birchas Hashem kommt dann zum Mensch durch the keli was zugegret. It comes through this vessel that a person prepares. So no, but rather, as oich der lechem, the parnasa min haaretz, the bread, any parnasa that a person gets here in this world from the ground, is den Aneufen von Lechem and Hashemayim, was is überhaupt nicht gebunden mit Darkei Teva. It's like the bread that descends, that rains from heaven, that has absolutely no connection to nature whatsoever. It comes into nature, which is just covering up the truth. But by mitis ubepnimius, it's not like the way the Eibishter conducts matters in nature for Lahavdil Goyim or anything else in the world, which nature, everything goes through nature. It doesn't go through the nature. The nature is not a keli and a levush for this. It just covers up the truth, which is the fact that it's all coming directly from the Eibishter himself. Und das is the emes shleimes habetachon von Yidden in Eibishter. And here, this is the true betachon that a Yid has in the Eibishter, even in a place where you do have the teva, and you do have the lechem and haaretz, and here the Yid has the betachon, that's the true betachon, as the Rebbe explains here. Nit not in a fall, not just in a situation. Wenn zet nit kein Einsichten darke teva zu bekommen parnasa. When a Yid sees absolutely no natural way, no idea, no possibility of how he can have parnasa. Ubemele, so in such a situation, is kilu ken bereden nit da, so it's like he has no choice. Und verlässt sich auf den Eibischen, als wird ihm besorgen, sein Parnasa bei Finissi, that the Eibisher will provide for him, take care of him, of his Parnasa in a miraculous way. The Yeridas Amon in Midbar, like it happened with the Yidden in the Midbar, that they had absolutely no means to get their food in Parnasa, and the Eibisher provided it for them. So when a person has his betachan in Hashem in such a kind of dire situation where he has nothing that he can do, so that's one level of betachan. But here, he sort of has no choice. Over here, he's not living within nature. Nature has nothing to do for him. So then he's relying on Nes, and that's his betachan. Rather, even a Yid that does have a means in nature that he has a keli that he can make. And this is what Hashem commanded, is by im abgelegt. However, it's clear to him, as sein parnasa is beikra lechem and hashamayim. What is this parnasa? Their parnasa is bread from heaven, nit gebunden mit darkei teva. It's not at all tied with the ways of nature at all. And as the avtache from the beracha avay lekecha b'chol hashatase, and that when the Eibishter says that he will bench you for this that you will do, meint nid blois. What this means is not only as das was the Eibishter benched him, is be'erech. So the medidus v'agbalas from the keli tase, it's not saying that based on the kind of keli you make within nature, that's the kind of blessing that will come through and according to the keli that you made, which he prepared. which is bracha v'atzlacha. And meaning, including when there is a special bracha and a special success. And you see in the means of nature that you prepared for the bracha of the Eibishter to come. Not even only this, nor says be'ein areich. The Eibishter benches a yid that he should see completely incomparable to what he has done. As the keli is netefes makim. The atzlach of the person is to such an extent that he looks at what he did and he sees that this has absolutely no credibility. This is nothing. This is totally insignificant to the real source of the bracha that comes from the Eibishter himself. That's the real truth about the hanhage of the Eibishter with Yidden in this world. Everything else in this world goes through Teva. Of course it comes from the Eibishter, but it comes from the Eibishter through the limitations of nature. And the limitations of nature limit the level of the ashpah that comes into the world. Whereas by a Yid, the beracha v'aylakecha b'chol asher taseh is in a completely higher level. That a Yid has to make that keli, because that's what the Eibishter wanted. But the truth is, the source of the bracha is totally unlimited to the keli. And it's not affected, it doesn't come through the keli. It comes directly from the Eibishter itself, not being affected by nature whatsoever. Und das ist die erste Bare, so this explains to us, was the man hat gedacht sein verbunden mit akoponim ktsas, avedas, v'tirches adam. Why, when the Yidden had to collect the man, it had to be with a little bit of at least some work and effort to collect this man. Wenn der Lechem in Hashemayim wollten ganzen nicht gewähnt verbunden mit avedas adam, if this bread that comes from the heaven would not at all be connected to any work that the person does from below, wollte es nicht gehad, kein Verbund und Ähnlichkeit mit Lechem in Haaretz. So then there would be no similarity and no connection at all to the bread that we do get from the ground. And then there would be a room to make the following mistake. So this is something that's not at all dependent on the work, on the preparation that the receiver does. So this is a situation where it's clear that nature doesn't play any role, and here I have to totally rely just on Hashem himself. Which is not the case when it comes to bread that grows from the ground. Since the Torah itself commands as sheishanim tizra sadecha that you have to plant and work in the field for 6 years. Da is neitig the avodah von dem Menschen. Here, my work is needed, it's necessary. Is the fungufa echach, and a person makes the mistake, and he says this itself proves as zugreiten the keli in teva hot that tfisis makim in der ashpas parnasa. There's a significance, there's some place for my work that adds to bringing down this hashpah. The hashpah comes through the means of nature. Even if it's the Eibishter's bracha, and it's only the Eibishter that commanded I should make this keli, but after all, he wanted me to make this keli, so it comes through the means of this nature of this keli. That's the mistake a person could make, because you see the separation, the divide that there is between the situation when they were in the midbar, where there was zero involvement of a person, and then when they come to Eretz Yisrael, where it's totally different, it changes completely. So therefore, it's euch, der Lechem in Hashemayim, gewähnen an Eifen vom Mante. In order not to make this kind of mistake, so even the Lechem that comes in Hashemayim also rained down from heaven in a way, as a soll sein, durch Tircha Hanal al Kolponim va'avedes Adam. There should be some kind of effort, some kind of a work that the person has to do to receive this. Was das beweist? What this comes to prove is, as euch dort wo es voran avedes Adam, even in a situation where the person is doing something, soll der Held werden, but what he should realize, the truth is, as the Ashpah Malmaila is klal net gebunden mit der Avedes von Adam. That the Avedes, that the Ashpah that comes from above, that is, has absolutely no connection, it's not influenced from the work that you do below. No, it says Lechem in Hashemayim, it's completely Lechem in Hashemayim. Das is the Nesinis Kayach, and this empowers a person also, as even when you come into a settled land, soll sich ablegen by a Yidden, that it should be clear to him in his mind, as euch der dortige Seder Avede, that even the way we live life in the world naturally, von Lechem and Haaretz, where you get your food and your bread from the ground, is bipnimi yusai, but what is it really? Lechem and Hashemayim. It still is also Lechem and Hashemayim. That's what the man came to prepare the Yidden for. It wasn't just to provide them the food for that time period, but it also gave them the right attitude after they're going to come into the settled land in Eretz Yisrael. So we have over here a combination of two opposites. On one hand, it's 100% purely Lechem and Hashemayim, not at all influenced by the nature of the person. The fact that you have some effort from the avodah of the person below is not minimizing that point. It's not coming to say, a bissel, it's totally in your avodah. No, it's completely lechem min hashamayim. Elamai, the reason why there had to be some tircha and work and effort from the person below is to make the point that the lechem min hashamayim is totally from heaven, includes even a situation where the Eibishter does want you to work. It's an external thing. But even then and there, it's completely not affected or influenced by the work that you do from below. It's completely a bracha that comes min hashamayim. Damit wird werden verstandigt war Pelle, was man gefunden bei Birchas HaMazon. With this we can answer something that seems to be a tremendous wonder regarding the benching. The erste bracha, the first bracha of benching, Birchas Hazan, the bracha which we begin Hazan Sa'ilam Kulai. Hat Moshe min Rabbeinu misaken gewen b'shah sheyarad lehem aman. So the Gemara tells us who instituted this bracha, Moshe Rabbeinu, when the man came down. The zweite bracha, Birchas Haaretz, the second bracha where we thank Hashem for the land of Eretz Yisrael. Yeshua tikkun lehem, so this Yeshua instituted for the Yidden, v'mezarayin in Eretz Yisrael, when the Yidden entered into Eretz Yisrael. So now here you have the obvious question. Birchas HaMazon is in Yana. What is Birchas HaMazon? What is it all about? Was Yid dankt und leibt dem Eibishten for the Mazon, was hat im Itzt gegeben, thanking the Eibishter for the food that he just ate, that the Eibishter gave him right here and now. If so, wie kommt es, as Birchas Hazan, was wir machen auf den, was is lechem in haaretz? So how could it be that when we bench today and we say the first bracha of Hazan, thanking the Eibishter for the food that we have here right now from the ground, is der Nusach, was Moshe hat misaken gewen, auf Yeridas Hamon, lechem min hashamayim. So we use the Nusach of the bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu instituted when the Yidden were eating the food that came from the heaven. It's a completely, how are we thanking the Eibishter with a Nusach of a bracha that was instituted for something totally different? Achmed, the question goes even further. The erste bracha learned and up from pasuk. The fact that we should bench the Eibishter with the first bracha, so this is learned from what it says in the pasuk, v'achalta v'savata u'verachta, that you eat and you're satisfied and you bench the Eibishter. Zu Birchas Hazan, this is the first bracha that the Eibishter feeds us and satisfies us. Shi'al achilu svia. The zweite bracha, then the second bracha the Gemara says, al ha'aretz. The pasuk there continues, v'chalta v'savata v'rachtas Hashem alakecha al ha'aretz. So zu birchas ha'aretz. This is the second bracha Yeshua instituted to thank Hashem for the land that produces the food. Was das meint bepashta? So what this simply means is as follows. As the Haidah by the zweite bracha, when we thank Hashem in the second bracha, ala aretz v'ala mazayim, for the land and its food, is nituf achilus v'yeh. We're not thanking for the eating and the being satisfied. Well, das ist doch shaykh zu birchas hazan. Ala achilus v'yeh. In the first bracha, you're thanking Hashem for the food that you just ate right now and you became satisfied. Nor in the second bracha, you thank Hashem oifan aretz. Here you thank Hashem for the land. We danken dem Eibishten, was the Aretz is azav, was is mafke mozen. That the Eibishter gave us this land which produces the food. But not about the actual food that you ate right now. You're thanking Hashem for the land that produces the food. Like the bracha of the third bracha of the Eibishter building the city Yerushalayim, which is regarding the place Yerushalayim. Is doch tamur b'yaiser. So based on this, on understanding here, what these two brachas are about, so it's very hard to understand. Wie kommt es, was die Haidah auf unser Achilos wir, that the first bracha, which is exclusively dedicated to thanking Hashem for the food that you just ate and was satisfied with right now, wird nichlal davke in the erste bracha. So this is included. Where do we thank Hashem for this? Specifically in the first bracha. Was ir yisaiden teichen is lechem min hashamayim, and this is a bracha that was instituted, and its whole content is all about the lechem min hashamayim. It should be the nusach of the second bracha, which speaks about the land, that should be in the first bracha, where we thank Hashem for the food that we're eating today from what grows from the land. And then yet, what do? We make the bracha with the nusach that Moshe Rabbeinu instituted, that the lechem min hashamayim. Aber, Leute, wie es hat sich gerät, is es moving. But früher, that is, wie es hat sich früher gerät, is es moving. Based on what we explained before, this is understood. Der lechem min haaretz, the bread that we eat that comes from the earth. Kailul das was der Eibishter bench the aretz, as a soll sein, eretz the mafke mazin, including this, that Hashem benches the land, that we say in the second bracha, that the land produces the food, is in der emisen bloiza levush to the shayrish maker from zeh mazin parnasa. This is merely a covering. This is a garment that covers up the truth, which is, was das is lechem and hashemayim. This is really bread that comes directly from heaven, from the Eibishter himself, and nature does not at all limit or influence it. When the Rabbi uses the term levush over here, he doesn't mean like the term levush that we used before regarding nature b'chlal, that actually limits and influences the level of the ashpa. This is just a covering over the truth that it's lechem and hashemayim. So since a Yid recognizes the truth as the shayrish von sein Mazen, that the source of his food is nit abhängig von seiner chana malacha. It's not dependent on his preparation or his work. It's not even dependent on the laws of nature, which are a keli for the bracha of Hashem. Rather, he realizes that by a Yid, it's totally, completely lechem that comes from heaven. Is move on as the nusach from birchas hazan of zayin achilus v'yeh. So when a Yid eats today, the bread that he eats in this world that came from the ground, what is the right nusach of the bracha that he should make for this food? Is the nusach from the bracha of lechem and hashemayim. The nusach of the bracha should be the bread that comes from heaven. Varam das is the emes and makir from zayin achilus v'yeh, because that is the true source of where the bread came from, what he ate and was satisfied with. And every Yid knows this. And this is the nusach of birchas hazam for every single Yid. Und erst danach, and then as a second bracha, then dankt dem Eibishten of them was bench the keli and levush and teva. Then we thank Hashem for the fact that he benches also the keli and the levush of nature, which is birchas haaretz, eretz the mafkamaz, and the land that produces the food. But when that bracha that you bench, the nature that produces this food, follows the first bracha, which is lechem and hashemayim, so then it's a different kind of bracha. Then, even when you're thanking Hashem for the ground that produces the food, you understand that it's not the ground itself that has any influence on the limits of how it's going to produce the food. It's a levush that has absolutely no effect whatsoever, because we already said the first bracha that it comes completely from Hashem directly. So this is the story with the man. We understand over here that the man comes min hashemayim, and the Rebbe now will connect this all to Shabbos. And before the Rebbe connects this to Shabbos, the Rebbe will summarize again the points that we said here about the man. Al pi kol anal vet euch verstehen die shaykhis zwischen man and Shabbos. Here we could see the connection that there is between the man and Shabbos. The alle pratam and al and man. So to summarize the details that we spoke here about the man, there are three main points regarding the man. Aleph number one, er is lechem and hashemayim begilui. It's bread from heaven openly. Come, you see clearly that it's only from heaven, there's no involvement of a person. Es weist offen klar, as man darf sich verlassen im Ganzen auf den Eibishten. This shows you clearly that you could rely, and you have to rely, totally on Hashem himself. Weil alles wird gegeben von dem Eibishten allein, because everything is being given to you from Hashem himself. Beis, the second point, es ist aber verbunden euch mit tirches Adam avodas hamakabel. At the same time, there is the effort that the person has to do here in order to receive it, like we see by the man, that they had to go and collect it and so on. Gimel, das Gita Koyach, the reason why you have these two opposites in the man is because this gives the power, as Eichenim Seder, von Lechem and Haaretz, that even when you didn't live life in a place where the food comes from the ground, wo begilui is this verbunden mit Eretz and Teva, whereas it seems that what we see revealed is that it comes from the earth and it comes from nature, or through nature, Zalman wissen, as Besharshe b'pnimi Yusay, is this Lechem and Hashemayim, that it doesn't even go through nature. It gets no influence from the nature whatsoever. It's just a cover-up. It really all comes directly from Hashem as Lechem and Hashemayim. These 3 points we find regarding Shabbos as well. And the Rebbe will show us here in Halacha regarding the preparation for Shabbos, regarding the food for Shabbos, where we see these 3 points. Aleph, number 1. Wegen die Tzrachen von Shabbos sagen Chazal. Regarding the food that a person needs for Shabbos, the Gemara tells us, Lavu alai. If you don't have money to buy the food for Shabbos, borrow money on my account. Ve'aminu bi, and trust me. Va'ani peireya, and I will pay you back for the money that you have borrowed. Hashem will take care of it for you. Das heißt, what does this mean? As euch even if a person is, God forbid, in a situation that he has nothing to buy for Shabbos. And And even if a person sees absolutely no source, no idea whatsoever from where he would earn money to pay back what he borrowed. Darf man sich im Ganzen verlassen auf den Eibischen. Nevertheless, when it comes to the food for Shabbos, rely completely on Hashem. Lavu alai. Borrow money on my account. Va'ani peireya. And Hashem promises, I pay you back. Weil die Tzarchei HaShabbos kommen al derech lechem min hashamayim. Because the things you need for Shabbos are granted to a person like the bread that comes from heaven. B'li avodas hamakabel. Without the person involving himself and making any effort in this whatsoever. So this is one aspect of the needs of the food for Shabbos, which is similar to the aspect of the man that comes completely min hashamayim. Beis, on the other hand, though, liidoch, is es doch bepashtus verbunden mit der Tirche von Lovu. So first of all, there is effort of the person here in this world. First, very simply, he has to go and borrow the money. Und noch mehr, der Din ist gesagt geworden, dafke, wenn hat chafetzim, was demolt yemashkenem v'yilva aleim. The Gemara says, when is a person able to do this? Only if he owns anything, he has something, then he can give it as a mashken, he can give it as a collateral for the lender, and then he can borrow the money and rely on this. Or he's actually not relying on the collateral, he's relying on Hashem, as the Rebbe will explain here. However, you could only rely on Hashem with the condition that he has an object that he can give as a mashken. If, however, he doesn't have a mashken that he can give, something that he can give as a collateral, is lo yilve v'shakadosh baruch hu yifra. He should not borrow that Hashem should pay him back. So how do we understand this? You may think that the pshat over here is that the reason why there's a condition that he has to have an object for a mashkin is because he's actually relying on the mashkin that will pay back with that mashkin, if he won't be able to pay. But that's not the correct pshat in the Gemara. The Gemara says that he's relying on Hashem to pay. And still there's a condition that you only rely on Hashem and totally rely on Hashem if you have a mashkin. So the Rabbi explains, das heißt, what this means is, even when he has any object that he's going to give as a mashkin, as a collateral, is nit sein kavonet zu batzolin dem choyv mit dem mashkin. The point there is not that, now he has a source of how he's going to pay his loan with this mashkin. Nor vidoloshon chazal, rather the Gemara clearly says, Lovu alai vani peireya. Borrow the money on my account, and Hashem says, I will pay you back. As a Kadosh Baruch Hu yamtzi loy lefroya, or the term that Alter Rebbe uses in Shulchan Aruch, Hashem will make it available for you to pay back. It's Hashem making it available. Von deswegen, but at the same time, fordert sich fort a bestimmte Tirche und Keli mitzad Adam. There's a condition that we demand that there has to be some kind of effort and some kind of a vessel that the person has to give. And he has to have an object that he can give as a collateral to be able to borrow based on this. See here, this is the other aspect of the man, that you see that there has to be an involvement of the avodah of the person. Even though the avodah of the person is not at all the source and the reason of what he's relying upon in order to pay back. Gimel, then there's the third point here. Der Ilui von Shabbos tutoi von is mashpia and the sheshis me'achol. The attitude we have in Shabbos and the bracha, the way it comes in Shabbos, this influences the entire Aveda of a Yid and the rest of the 6 days of the week. Durch dem, was a Yid hat der fulle Betochen b'Hashem. When a Yid has this attitude towards Shabbos in this way, with an absolute Betochen, as a Kadosh Baruch Hu yamtzi loy lefroya, that the Eibishter is the one that will make available for me to pay back. Und sieht, wie der Eibishter bencht sein Tirche von Lovu alai. And he sees clearly how the Eibishter is benching, so to speak, his Tirche of the fact that he had to borrow the money, durch der Keli, und die Chafetzim, the fact that there's a chayfetz, there's an object that he gave as a mashkin, but he sees that it's the Eibishter that pays him back. Nit al pi darkei teva, not at all through any means of nature. So then what happens? Is euch sein Eisik b'sheishis yimei ha'chol and anoifen. So then even when you go to work on all the other days, the 6 days of the week, is in such a way was anerkannt, that the person clearly recognizes as the parnasa was bakum durch sein Eisarvin akeli in teva, that even this parnasa that you get through the hard work that you do in the laws of nature is this and the emerson and inyufun ani peireya, that the truth is that none of the nature has anything to do with this. It's not even a means through nature. It's totally the bracha of Hashem. Ani pareya. The Rebbe is in mamtzi. The Eibusher makes it available, and the Rabbi here focuses on this word mamtzi, b'derech mitzia. It's like when you find a lost object which was totally unexpected. Zayin parnase in an oifen von l'mayla miderech hateva. Hashem brings you the parnase that's completely above nature. Menit was die bracha shalamayla ma'ateva is angetan in our lavush von teva. There's a cover-up. There's a cover-up of nature, and there's the desire of Hashem that the person should do his actions within the means of nature. But nature has absolutely nothing to do with the hashpah of the person, as the person saw it clearly when it came to Shabbos. Lavu alai v'ani pereya, that the Eibusher provided him completely higher than the means of nature. So we see here, regarding Shabbos, the same exact three aspects that we had before regarding the man. On one hand, it comes totally from above. On the other hand, we see that there is a keli that the person has to make below, the mashkin that he has to have available. And then from this, it brings the person to the awareness that this is the truth about the yid's hashpah in the world b'chlal. Every single day, even when he does after work, it's all really just hashpah from the Eibusher. Based on this, we can understand something else. Das, was es verstandig von Zohar, what it's understood from what it says in the Zohar, if in Pasuk al Yosem Mimeno ad Boker, don't leave over anything from the month to the next morning. As alle sheish yimei hashavua werden gebenched mitten mon von Shabbos, that all 6 days of the week, so they are benched with the mon from Shabbos. And then the Zohar says, begin the lo yoev lo yosef yomedah lechavrei, in order that the person should not give or sort of lend from one day to another. So the question over here is, seemingly, what's the connection between these 2 points? As vibalt, the hashpah saman is b'Shabbos, that since the source of the hashpah of the man comes from Shabbos, the riber taminet ibelazim von ein tag auf den zweiten. That is the reason, as the Zohar says, begin, that you shouldn't leave over from one day to another. How are these 2 points related to one another? Val pianal is this moving. Based on what we explained here, this is clearly understood. Das was die bracha mamayla, auf hashpah hamon, wird aufgetan b'Shabbos. The fact that the bracha for the man in its source above is where? Is when? On Shabbos. Is weil in Yonai von man is hashpah von der Eibushen, was is nit malobischen de kelim malavushim von teva. It's because man is a source of hashpah from Hashem that has absolutely nothing to do with nature and the vessels of nature whatsoever. Punkt, wie das is in Yonif and Shabbos. Exactly what Shabbos is. Kanal Baruch, as we explained, that we see that Shabbos is a time where the hashpah, the bracha, comes totally from Hashem. And therefore the time for the bracha of the man is literally on Shabbos, because that's the source of the man, a place where it has no shaykhs to the teva and the avodah of a person. Und der Rebbe darf das sein bei Ofen Kazeh, so therefore this truth of what the man in essence is also has to be over here below. Even after this hashpah of the man actually descends and comes down here below. In der hashpah darf nicht sein hereingemischt die Cheshbeinis von dem Menschen al pi teva. In the hashpah of the man below, there should be no involvement whatsoever of any calculations that a person makes according to nature. Was direkt sich heißen dann, was mir lost iber, and then was mir lost iber von ein Tag auf den zweiten. Where do you see that a person is concerned about nature if he's concerned about the next day and he wants to make sure for himself that he's going to provide for the next day? So therefore, when a person realizes that the man comes from Shabbos, which is completely above nature, so then begin, as the Zohar says, so then in order that he should then realize on every day of the week as well that there's nothing to be worried about from one day to the next. It's all coming directly from Hashem. Okay, so what you see over here is that there's the source of the man from above, and then there's the man when it comes down. The source of the man above is Shabbos. And then there's the man the way it came down here in this world. And even after the man does come down in the world, then the person has to collect it, and he has to eat it, and so there's involvement of the person. But even here, the man below, he also has to treat the man for what it really is in its source above that has nothing to do with the person here below. Afal pikein, however, is b'Shabbos given the bracha v'hashpah hamon blois l'mayla. Yes, the source of the bracha of the man comes from Shabbos. But the bracha of the man on Shabbos is only above. The man did not actually come down here below. That's the time where the level and the source of the man above. But on Shabbos, there was no man that descended into the Metzias of the world. Warum? Das, was man gefindt bei man der Inyan von Matar, nit vital, the fact that you have regarding the man, that it's similar to rain, and not like the dew, as es is verbunden mit mekabel, that there is an involvement of the person receiving it, kanal, the chiluk von tzadikim, beinanim, as we explained before, that in man you see the differences of the levels of the person that got the man. Is das wie der man is yoyred mi madrigasai und vet nimshach lamata. So this is the man when it descends, when it leaves its source above, and it comes over here in this world. So over here, the man in this world, there's the mekabel that receives it, that it matters on what level you're on. Aber wie der Iyum von man is b'mekaimai, but the source and the essence of what man is in its source above, b'pchinis Shabbos, is that in ganzen hechef and shayches mit welach es is pula from mekabel. There, that's the source of the bracha of the man. And here it's lamaila. There's no collecting the man. There's no eating the man. Over there, it remains completely above the recipient and the level of the person that takes and collects the man. So there's the man lamaila and the man lamata. That's the point there. But here, the key is, even after the man comes down lamata, it remains in the same purity that it has above. And adarabah, that's the whole point, even after it does come below. And it is a place where we see the involvement of the mekabel. It doesn't change the nature of what the man is. It remains purely lechem and hashemayim, the way it was above. However, it descends below in this place, in this reality. And here, even in this reality, where there is the avodah of a person, that's the recipient and the level that he's on, he's getting lechem min hashemayim. And this is also the way it is regarding Shabbos, simply. The fact that when it comes to the food that a person has to buy Shabbos, and the Gemara says the condition that he has to have a mashkin, that only then could he borrow money in Hashem's account, and then he believes that Hashem will be the one that will pay. Is das far Shabbos? This is all a halacha that applies before Shabbos, when he has to buy his food for Shabbos. Of the tzarchei Shabbos. So this is not the essence of Shabbos in its source. This is sort of already a yirida of Shabbos. This is on Friday when you have to prepare the food for Shabbos. So yes, he's completely relying on Hashem. But nevertheless, there is the condition of the person of going and borrowing and having a keli for a mashkin. But what's the source of this concept? The way it is in Shabbos itself, so then all his work is done. When the person shouldn't even be thinking at all about any of his work whatsoever, because this is the source of the concept, the way it is in Shabbos itself. So now this brings us to the other mitzvah that there was regarding man. On the Rebbe is der Inyan from V'lo Yatsu b'Shabbos Lilkait, the second mitzvah that the pasuk said L'man Anasenu, that this is the purpose of the man to test Yidden, and the second mitzvah was that they will not go out and collect the man on Shabbos. Eine from the mitzvahs atluyas by one of the mitzvahs in connection to the man. Velchedrik da is der tam v'toichen from Yeridus Haman, and this mitzvah as well expresses the reason and the concept of what man is, that you don't collect man on Shabbos. What is this saying? On Shabbos itself is euch dala mata meir the beginne von man wie das is b'mekaimai. This is the time that even here below it's revealed the essence and the source of what the man is and its source above in its place. Und der Rebbe darf sich anhören bei jedem einem, so therefore it should be sensed by everybody here below, as in dem kann it sein kein shum areinmischen von the Menschen, that there's no involvement at all whatsoever of the person's entity, of him doing anything. Not even any movement of just receiving, of likut, of collecting the man. Like it is on the 6 days of creation, and therefore and therefore on Shabbos you don't go out to collect the man. That expresses the source and the essence of what the man is about, that it's completely lechem and hashemayim, that has nothing to do with the effort of the person. It's a complete bracha from Hashem from above.